Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you're at. I'm excited to welcome you all to another digital event with ArchVision. Today we have Unlocking AVAIL, your all-in-one content management solution. My name is Kelsey Kolbenschlag. I'm Sales Operations Manager here at ArchVision. I'm joined today by Clay Watson. He is the Director of Customer Success at AVAIL. Clay brings over 8 years of SaaS customer service experience to his role as a Director of Customer Success at AVAIL. Clay is passionate about helping others maximize product value to achieve their business goals. Super excited to have him here. For those that don't know, ArchVision and AVAIL work hand in hand, and so what he's going to show you is just some amazing stuff, and we are always here to answer questions anybody here on the team. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Clay.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelsey. So I'm excited to be a part of this digital event. Again, ArchVision and AVAIL are sister companies in a lot of ways. We work very closely with each other. And so I'm kind of excited to share a little bit more about AVAIL. I know there's plenty of people out there who may be just kind of dabbling in content management, maybe looking for a solution, or maybe kind of understanding the solution that's the right fit. So I'm going to cover that today. I'm going to talk about AVAIL. I'm going to talk about what we do, what we are, what we kind of believe in, and then the variety of components that we have available to our customers. So let me switch over. I'm going to go over through a couple of slides, and then I'm actually going to take it into a demo. I'll give you a live demo of AVAIL, the ins and outs, the features, the bells and whistles, all of that good stuff. And then we're going to cover things and then wrap things up and open it up for any questions towards the end. All right, so let me switch over to my slide deck. Again, I'm going to talk over just some of the basics around AVAIL, and then we'll dive into the demo. All right, so looking at the agenda, things that I'm going to cover during this this kind of portion of the event. I'm going to talk about what we are and kind of define AVAIL, talk about it at a high level. That's kind of like where I like to start, and then we can kind of get into the nitty gritty, the different features and components and things like that. But there are some core principles that I want to cover. We'll talk about roles and permissions, how that's structured a little bit, kind of laying into just kind of what, how you can manage this platform. And then we'll jump into the demo. We'll talk about searching and browsing. That's really something that we stand on, is be able to find the content that you need as quickly as possible. And then I'm also going to talk about a few of the different features, one of which I've got listed here, palettes. And they're also going to talk about, I'm going to touch on some of the AVAIL for Revit and also AVAIL for AutoCAD and Civil 3D add-ins that are relatively new to AVAIL, to its kind of product collection. So let's go ahead and dive in. Whenever I'm describing AVAIL for the first time, usually people understand that it's a content management solution. It's a platform where you can have your BIM content, the single source of truth, right? So that's kind of what we really lean into, provide a single source of truth, a centralized location for all of your assets. And so that can be a very big collection of assets and content. So we are always kind of balancing these two components. So we always want to create an experience where it is the content that is easy to maintain, and it's also easy to consume. And we believe that that's kind of the best type of content management solution, has a balance of those two aspects. So I'm going to kind of talk about both of those, kind of weigh them, and I'll bring this slide up again just to kind of refresh and kind of talk about this a little bit more based on kind of ease of maintenance and ease of consumption. So if you're looking at, again, this is AVAIL at the high level as a single source of truth, a centralized library of content. If you're looking at it in a project life cycle, this visualization can be very helpful to understand kind of where we sit. So if you're starting with this project file at the very bottom, you've got your QA, QC process, right? You may be managing things in a container library. And some of the aspects that I'm going to be talking about with AVAIL is around our harvest component, where we're able to extract elements from a container file into AVAIL and bring it into this searchable visual context in our platform. which is like your searchable library. And then again, I'm going to talk about palettes and how that kind of completes the process, especially with Revit, where you're kind of extracting these things from the container file using our tool Harvest, bringing it into our searchable library, into palettes, and then back into the project. So kind of keep that, we're going to keep that kind of top of mind here to start. And again, this is something that I'll probably touch on a little bit later, especially when we start to talk about Harvest and kind of talk about some of the big benefits of using this additional tool with AVAIL. Okay, so to talk about a little bit more about AVAIL, defining kind of what we are and some of the principles that we kind of founding the platform and all the different features and components. So there's two core principles. The first is that AVAIL is file type agnostic. So I've already kind of mentioned that we've got some additional add-ins for AutoCAD and Civil 3D and Revit, but AVAIL can really kind of house and be a central source of truth for all of your project files. So anything around a project, anything related to the project, maybe it's not just around documentation or BIM, but it could be a PDF, it could be a spec sheet, it could be a certificate that may be related to a project or a specific asset. It could be Word documents, Miro boards. We have the capability to actually open up URLs. You can bring them into AVAIL. You can actually view the browser in the AVAIL desktop and search a web page. We can even have PowerPoints, Bluebeam assets, Rhino, visualization, SketchUp is a big one as well. So we accept and support all of those different file types. The ones listed here are kind of probably the most popular or most seen across our customer base. But again, we can support it all. So leading off that, as file type agnostic, we are also file location agnostic. So wherever those assets live, whether it's on a local drive, a network drive, a Google Drive, Ignite, SharePoint, ACC, those components can stay the same. That file structure that you have in place that you're using on a regular basis to organize those things in your specific network can stay the same. AVAIL kind of sits on top of that to allow this better search experience and a better visual navigation of all of this content. And again, all of these assets that it may be a web page, it may be a PDF over here or a PowerPoint, or your BIM content right around Revit or AutoCAD, but it can all live on top of your folder structure and your file network and be this kind of like fresh visual interface where you can find things faster. All right. So talking a little bit more about roles and permissions. So I like to start here just because we're going to talk about both of these components. Some of the things I mentioned with Harvest are specifically for publishers. So we do like to distinguish our users based on those roles and permissions, because it kind of determines what they're able to do, whether they are maintaining the content or they're consuming the content. Again, kind of striking that balance between those kind of additional ideals that we follow. So publishers are going to be really kind of doing a lot of the creation, the organization of the content within AVAIL, the tagging and sharing of different assets within AVAIL, because there's going to be some components there to make that easier to manage. And then the consumers are just kind of the day-to-day end users. They're going to AVAIL, they're using the search, they're browsing some of the channels, and they're getting the content and bringing it into their project. So you kind of look at these two levels. We've kept it pretty basic, publishers and consumers, and publishers kind of do all of that content delivery work up front, and the consumers are there just to get in there, grab what they need, and move it into their project. All right, cool. So now I'm going to switch over, change gears, move away from the PowerPoint slides and actually into the demo environment. So let me make that switch right now. Just switch it over to a different screen. And we'll talk a little bit about what AVAIL looks like. All right, excellent. So this is the AVAIL desktop. So anytime that when you're first new to AVAIL, this is going to be kind of an empty page, right? There's going to be a lot to do and to create and to kind of create this kind of this highly visual interface that you see here. But just right off the bat, what you're going to look at are the channels. And so channels are our first layer of visual navigation within AVAIL. And it's really how you can group your content together. So here you can kind of see that, with this demo environment, I've got some Revit specific channels. I've got some branding and logos, some SketchUp content, precedent library with some photography, some manufacturer URLs, some civil detail block libraries, all kind of in here in this kind of first homepage of all the channels that are available. So clicking into some of these channels, we're going to kind of click around and kind of go back and forth just because, again, I want to show you some of the capabilities with this kind of file type agnostic principle that I spoke about just a minute ago. So if we just jump into, let's start with the Revit Families library. The first thing that you're going to see when you open up that channel is going to be the content, right? And there's going to be different ways that you can organize and tag this content, and that'll be up for the publishers when they're kind of bringing it in. But it's all, the content arrives in Avail through a drag and drop. And we don't actually take any of that content, or you're not moving the content out of your network or out of your folder structure. It's just a visual representation, a high-res image of this content that you've got this additional capability to tag it, to increase and to kind of enhance the searching around this content. But it's all still living at the same location. So if I were to look at a piece of content, let's take, for example, this base cabinet. And I was going to look at this. You can open it up, see a high-res preview, but with the information itself is actually, it's going to give you the location. So this is always going to stay the same. So again, this is kind of where it lives on this Z drive for this demo environment. And that's going to be the source, the source wherever it lives in Avail. It's always going to resolve to this same location. That's a good way to kind of think about and connect back to that file location agnostic principle, is that the content is visual, it's searchable in Avail, but it still resolves to that same file path that you would normally find it within your folder structure. So as you're looking at the content itself, there's a couple different things that I want to point out. Let me go back to some of a separate Revit channel, just so that we can see some of the really kind of benefits of those high-res previews. It's great for families. It's even better for details and sheets and things like that. So let me open up a sheet and show you kind of what this looks like. So again, you can open up this separate window and actually see this sheet. You can zoom in, zoom out. We've actually got a component here where, as you're using Avail and you're extracting this sheet from your container file, we can actually basically append all of the individual drafting views on that sheet, as well as legends and schedules right next to the content. So this makes it a really nice feature just to kind of bring some of these assets a little bit closer together. So no matter if they're being, organized in different ways in Avail, you can kind of see these things all together and have a quick access to them. Let's switch back to our look at some of the drafting views as well. That's a good example of another kind of benefit of the high-res previews. You'll notice this one actually has this flag notated on it. So this is one of the kind of features of Avail, is that you do have the option to flag content as well as leave a comment for that content. And that's just as easy as clicking this flag button. Right now, I've already got this flag enabled, but if I wanted to remove it or re-add it, I could. And you're always going to be asked to leave a note, right? Why are you flagging this content? What needs to be done to it? If it needs some work or needs to be updated, you can leave a note. This needs review. You're going to add your flag, and then you can actually see the comment in this comments panel. So you can see every time I flagged it, some of the comments, check this out, this needs review, kind of has that comments history available right in this panel itself. This is another example. You can open up this content view. You don't have to actually open up the single individual window itself. You can just open up this preview. It's zoomable, and it's just a really nice way to not even have to have Revit open to actually kind of view this content in a really kind of efficient way. All right, great. So that is kind of the basic navigation, right? So if you're in if you're going to your homepage, you click into a channel, you can navigate that channel based on the tags and filters within it. So in this example, we jumped into this specific filter for drafting views. You have some additional filtering at the very bottom. So if this was still, if you're just browsing through this channel and you are needing to refine that a little bit more, instead of searching for a keyword, you can actually have these tag and filters at the very bottom. So again, if you wanted to, select those, again, it's going to narrow that down a little bit more. You can deselect it, clear the search if you need to start over. But this is kind of a way that you can kind of quickly browse a channel and find exactly what you're looking for. If you were going to go to Avail, just kind of on the consumer side, right, as people are logging in day to day, they're looking for something, you can engage our global search. And so this would be something that if you don't have a channel open, you can search across all channels and just with a keyword, right? So if it was casework, we're looking at that before, or maybe even like base cabinet. Let's do that. Base cabinet, it's going to pull open those results, right? It's going to order those based on the file name, right, that you see here highlighted for base cabinet. It's also going to order things based on the tag. So even if it wasn't named something, but it had, if it wasn't named base cabinet, but it had base cabinet as a tag, it would still produce results just to kind of bolster the results and kind of get to the asset faster. It's also going to tell you exactly which channels that content lives in. So if you did want to kind of take a deeper dive, maybe this is like, okay, maybe you're seeing too much and you just wanted to see your 2024 library, you could jump into that. And then this is exactly the base cabinet. This is the only one that exists in your 2024 library. So again, you still have those filters at the bottom, but this is a quick way to search across all channels, narrow down to what you're looking for, and then bring it into your project. All right, excellent. So we're talking about flags and comments. The next thing I'm going to talk about is really kind of aimed towards the end user, so the consumers, right? So this is a feature called palettes. And what palettes are great for, we've seen it used in a lot of different ways, but what they're really great for is kind of driving project workflows. It allows users to collaborate on projects. You also have a specific tool within palettes that allows you to export drafting views as PDFs for quick markup. Again, without even have to be in Revit, you can still get to these assets and complete the kind of the markup workflow directly using palettes. And then it could be just a way that's it's almost like a shopping cart. It could be a way that you can collect your favorites. Or maybe it's project specific or client specific, where you're kind of bringing some of these assets together across your library as you're browsing or searching. You can kind of start to collect and add these things to a palette. So I'll show you an example of one, and then I'll show you how you can go about creating a new one. Just kind of give a short demo there, and then as well as a quick demo of the PDF export tool. So you're going to find palettes right underneath the homepage menu option. Here I've got a collection of different palettes. These are all created by me. And again, this is just a collection, as I've gone into some of these channels, it could be, different channels or the same channel. This is just a collection that I brought in together that I wanted to review, or maybe I wanted to bring all of these things into a project at once, which is also a functionality that we can demo as well. So as you're creating the palette, you can share that with others. So here I've shared it with a colleague, Rob. You can share it with multiple users. And at that point, it kind of opens up that palette for those other users to add or remove whatever they need from that palette as well. So again, it leans on this kind of collaborative approach on where you see some of the flip side of that is like looking at a channel, right? The channels are kind of hard coded in a lot of ways. They're under the publisher's control. They're that central source of truth. And a palette is a little more flexible. It's a little bit more open, a little bit more collaborative, especially on the end user's perspective, where they don't have a lot of control within channels other than viewing content. With palettes, you can kind of get this edit privileges. One thing to note is that if you're editing a palette, it's not going to change anything with that source content within a channel. So if you're adding and deleting things from a palette, all of that source content is going to stay the same, stay exactly where it's at. It's just going to be from this palettes interface where things are being edited. So let's go ahead and create a new palette. And go back here and we'll start one up really quick. And then I'll just do this one as ArchVision. I'm going to create that. And so right now it's empty. I've got nothing there. But if I were to go into, let's go back to my drafting view library. We're going to take a look at some views here. I'm going to grab some of these. You can right click, add to palette. There's my ArchVision palette that I just created. And now I'm going to copy those things over so they are available in my palette and they're available to be shared with others. So if I go back here, it's going to pop up and it's going to show me exactly what I've just added. To take that one step further, if I did need to export any of these views for markup, we do have this PDF lens. That's kind of how we call this tool. And it's exclusive to palettes. You're only going to see this on the palettes page. But it's a way, again, that you can just kind of quickly select. You can select one or multiples. I wanted to add 4 to this export. I could do that. I was going to add a few more. That's fine. But if I wanted to export it, I can export it as PDF, PNG, or JPEG. And then at that point, I'm just going to name the file, tell it where it should be saved, and then it'll be ready to go. And again, this is one of the big benefits, especially with this PDF exporter and even the palettes interface. It's a great way to kind of narrow some of this content, right? So you might have individuals that maybe aren't using Avail day to day, maybe they're not using Revit at all, but they kind of need a way that they can see these assets and see these like high-res previews and maybe be able to export them for their workflows. And palettes are a great way to do that so that they can kind of go in or maybe someone can create a palette for them, share it with them, and they've got direct access without ever having to open Revit and without really needing a bunch of experience with Avail. It's easy to kind of go to a palette. It's a nice small collection of content that you can kind of point them to. We also have the ability to share a link to a palette. So if you right click, you can actually get link to this palette that's really easily shared. So if you've got a palette created and you want to send it over to someone else, you can, share that in Teams or share that in Slack and whatever kind of messaging or kind of internal messaging tool that you're using. Really easy to share those things across Avail users. Excellent. This is a great segue to show a little bit off with the Avail for Revit and Avail for AutoCAD and Civil 3D assets, or add-ins. So what I've gone over so far, again, we've talked about some of the core principles of Avail, the file type agnostic, file location agnostic. We talked about some of the roles and permissions between publishers delivering content, and then consumers actually finding that content, right? Searching for it, finding it, and then actually bringing it into the project. So what does that look like when they actually they found the content in Avail? What's the next step of that workflow to actually bring it into Revit? And a lot of this hinges on just like a simple drag and drop. And then we also have a tool within our Avail for Revit add-in to bulk load palettes. So I'm going to show off a couple of those examples. I'm going to switch over to a Revit demo environment. Let me switch right now. And then I'll carry over, kind of show you the AutoCAD and Civil 3D workflow as well, because there's a little similarities and then a little bit different on some of those components. So we'll start with Revit. All right, excellent. So far we've got, this is our Avail for Revit add-in. So what you'll see here is a project navigator a tool. So we've got some filtering, we've got a search capability within Project Navigator. And so you can search across, kind of find different things within your specific project that may be there. So if we're going to look for a cabinet, you can actually look through and you can see, if I was looking at this, this downlight under cabinet or maybe this base cabinet, I can see the actual types and the instances where they're located. If I was to select that, it's going to give me this instance navigator. And so what this shows me is, where what room that's located in, and you can actually, filter this or group this by room or level. And this is also going to give you a tool to actually navigate to that specific instance within a project. And this is where you can actually just click and actually jump into the specific place in the project. There we are. It's going to show you exactly where it is. So if you were actually if you were searching and you didn't find what you needed, this is kind of what is actually in your project, which pieces of content that you can navigate to. If that didn't exist and you needed to bring it into your project for the first time, you can actually cast this search to AVAIL just by clicking this button. It's going to open up the AVAIL desktop and actually generate and run that search across your library. And so in this instance, it's got a couple of things highlighted. If I wanted to go down and select one, actually, let me just minimize this screen. Yeah, there we go. And let me clear the search. Sorry. And so as you're going through and you're selecting different items, what you're going to notice is that there's this tray that opens up. And so as you're kind of looking through and selecting different components, you'll see this change. You can select multiple. And these are items that you can load, right? So you can kind of go through, again, casting that search from Project Navigator over into your desktop, your centralized library. And this is a way that you can grab these items, load them into the project. And when you're loading them, if I was just going to load this vanity cabinet, you can actually select the types and parameters. We're always going to give you an option instead of just loading everything that may or may not be needed. You actually have this additional instance Navigator so that you can select your types. So I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. I'm going to do this with a drag and drop instead of using the load item button here, just to kind of show you what that looks like. Drag this over. And I'm just going to drop it right here. It's going to do a little upgrade. All right, so this is an instance navigator. It's similar to what we saw before, but this is going to show me which types I want to load. And again, you can select one or multiple, and then load them into the project. And then if I did want to grab one of these and actually place it, you can do that from this navigator as well. It's going to be a little outsized, but we'll place it there. All right. So that kind of talks about a little bit about AVAIL for Revit. Again, it's the Project Navigator interface. You get that searching component, the filtering component, where you can kind of find those instances. You can jump to the instance in the project, and then you can just drag and drop your assets directly into Revit from the desktop and from Instance Navigator. So to kind of show a little bit more kind of the flip side of the Revit-related content, we also have a similar add-in for AutoCAD and Civil 3D. And these are brand new products for AVAIL. We've had some legacy products in the past, but we've kind of updated these. We've refreshed the interface a little bit. And it kind of all ties back to being like that file, a true file type agnostic. So we're able to support some of these DWG files a little bit better. And we can do some more things on the back end to improve that whole workflow for those teams. So I'm going to switch over to Civil 3D, show this add-in as a comparison to Revit. So here I've got this signage block library. So that is an important component. And kind of the first and foremost, what we support in AutoCAD and Civil 3D are block libraries. And that is just kind of our starting block, so to speak. And we tend to expand this beyond these specific like blocks, but right now, you can index your block library into AVAIL, and then you can have this nice kind of visual interface through our add-in to, again, retrieve the asset and then drag and drop into the project. So I'll show you an example of this. A quick reference to why you're seeing these channels. So if we go back to my homepage, what I've done in AVAIL is I actually grouped these channels, these specific AutoCAD and Civil 3D channels. You'll see them up here, this block libraries. And so we have an additional feature that's called application mappings. And so what I've actually done is, because I've grouped these channels of content, what I've done with this tool is actually map them to AutoCAD. So it's something that we don't do the same way with the Revit content. But for this specific add-in that we built for AutoCAD and Civil 3D, we tied it into application mappings, and I think eventually we'll carry that over to some of the Revit channels as well. But right now, that gives you a really nice, condensed, really practical group of channels that these users are going to be that they would need to interface with. So they're not going to see everything that you may see without this application mappings. You're going to see this specific channel group of the content that makes sense for AutoCAD and Civil 3D. So that's just a little bit behind the scenes. Again, this is something that a publisher would do as they're kind of maintaining these channels and channel groups. They can map them to AutoCAD and Civil 3D so that this is the collection of content that those users would interface with. All right, let me close out of this. Move this out of the way. So with this AutoCAD and Civil 3D add-in, you still have the ability to search across channels. This is something that you can do in the Revit add-in. You don't have the same filtering capabilities, so there's kind of give and take there, but you do have this kind of open, kind of full channel visibility. So if I was going to open up this civil detail block libraries, double click, open it up, I can actually see these. And then from there, it's just a drag and drop into AutoCAD. And oops, let me see here. There we go. And there it is. All right. Yeah. And you can drag multiples. So if you were to select multiples, you could pull those in as well. But it's as simple as a drag and drop, right? So you can search these things across the library, and then you can move them into your work set. So we also added an additional component for Civil 3D. So not just with DWG blocks, but we also added this component around pipe network catalogs. And so what we've kind of done is given users the ability, or giving kind of publishers the ability to actually set these things up from a kind of manager standpoint, and kind of allow some of these settings to be automated in a lot of ways. So in this example, if you've got any experience with managing some of these pipe network catalogs, it can be kind of cumbersome, right? There's a lot of additional clicks that you would have to do to actually pull up and open some of these catalogs. And so what our add-in does is that we can actually set the defaults to some of these locations and some of the catalog types, so that users can quickly have this kind of list of catalogs that may be available, and they can quickly load these things into Civil 3D. So again, this is kind of a publisher would kind of go behind the scenes. They can edit these or create new catalogs. They can kind of fill in the subsets, whether it's the location of the catalog itself, wherever it's living on the network, and then kind of what type of catalog it is. You can create these things, customize them, and make it really easy and simple to load them from this add-in. All right, so let's see. Oh yeah, and here are the settings that loaded up. They're just on a different screen. So yeah, this is the catalog folder, the pipe catalog type, structure catalog type. I'm gonna give it a name, a little description if you want to, and then you can save that and store that for end users to load quickly. All right. All right, let me stop sharing for a second. I'm going to switch back over to a few more slides to go over kind of a really big tool that's available for AVAIL users, is called a Harvest. And so we actually have both of these. We have Harvest available for Revit as well as AutoCAD and Civil 3D. But I do want to talk about this because it is a big component. It's a big around automating a lot of the indexing flow. Like, so when you're bringing content into AVAIL, and kind of virtualizing it and creating the kind of visual thumbnails, Harvest does a lot of that behind the scenes for publishers, and it kind of improves that workflow. Again, it kind of goes back to kind of easy to maintain content. Harvest is a big part of that specific functionality. So let me share, go back to some of my slides. We're going to talk about Harvest, and then I'll actually kind of show you what that looks like, and then some of the end results of Harvest, some of the automation that goes on that's built into that tool. All right, let me see here. All right. So going back again, I just mentioned it, but it's here on the slide again. So ease of maintenance, ease of consumption. So Harvest kind of fits both of those things. It kind of does a lot of the maintenance for you because there's going to be a lot of automation that's built into Harvest. And then there's also going to be this nice component where it's going to make this content even easier to consume in the long run. Let's see here. All right. So again, going back, I talked about this a little bit, and it's good to kind of reflect on it just because we are kind of focusing on Harvest for a little bit. So looking at AVAIL from the project lifecycle, you're starting with that project file, the container library, really, where all those drafting views and sheets live. So again, Harvest is our tool where you can continue to maintain your container library. AVAIL is very pro container library management, so you don't actually have to change any of that workflow. Those assets can still live there, but Harvest is a tool where you can take that and make it a lot easier to navigate and find things that may live in that container. So container files are great for maintenance, but not great for navigation and doesn't have a great searchability to it. So Harvest takes those, extracts the individual elements, brings them into AVAIL so that they can be searched. You have this kind of automated tagging that goes along to kind of bolster that search a little bit of the content. We're also running some OCR and AI processing on the back end for drafting views to allow you to have full text searchability of those drafting views. So literally any text on that view or on that DWG block can be searched for in AVAIL. And I'll show you a couple examples of those in the desktop. And then we also have this related content component. One of the things that I had shown with a sheet, right? If you're looking at that sheet and then you kind of have that subset of the specific views on that sheet, that is a good example. It's an output of Harvest. So again, bringing these things that just make sense to be related and be kind of side by side within for those pieces of content. Harvest does that on the back end. You do have some manual ways that you can do that for publishers, but again, Harvest is kind of back into that, making things a little bit more automated and easier to maintain and consume in the long run. So overall, I've kind of touched on a little bit of these, but the big benefits of Harvest for Revit is that, again, you can keep your elements in a container file for easy maintenance. You can virtualize your elements so they're easier to find. You can create these high-res images of the drafting views, which is something we kind of looked at in our desktop. And then you kind of eliminate the need of Revit to be present at all. And you've got this ability to extract these elements, make them visual, make them searchable. You got this full text search capability as well. And it kind of eliminates that step for those principals or non-Revit users. Let me switch over and actually show you what that looks like for Revit. So I'm going to go back here. Just going to close out of this view. And then, so what I had shown off before is that you, for Project Navigator, so this is the AVAIL for Revit add-in. You first open that up, you're going to see Project Navigator. And then for publishers, the ones who are delivering the content through AVAIL, they're going to have this Harvest icon. And this is the way that they can enable Harvest mode through the add-in. And so what that does is it kind of switches a little bit of the components that you'll see here. This is going to give you a way, depending on what container file that you're working in, you've got the ability to search and filter through that. And then what you're actually going to be doing is building a queue, building a harvest queue of exactly which elements you want to harvest at a time. And so as you kind of go through here, if I were to grab some of these assets, let me grab the schedule. It's going to create this queue. And then, depending on how I've got my settings, what you always want to do with Revit is you're going to have this this component where you need to point harvest to a specific channel, right? Where are these things going to be visualized in AVAIL? And then you're also going to have a distribution location. So it's like, where are you, if you're extracting these elements, where do you want them to live? What folder do you want them to live in your network? So you'll have these two kind of output steps to select that destination channel and then distribution location. And then here at the very bottom, you've got these related content components as well. So these additional features that you can enable through the harvest process. And again, we've got it for sheets. We just saw an example of that. And we've also recently added the same kind of functionality for drafting views. So if you're looking at a drafting view, we can actually automatically relate any of the elements or components of that drafting view as related content. So you can kind of, again, see that full drafting view and then the additional components, system families, things like that, right next to it in the same window. On the AutoCAD and Civil 3D part, you also have a harvest component. So we switch over here. I'll show you harvest mode. Again, it's going to be a very similar interface. You don't have the same filters that you would see in Revit, but you do have the ability to build your queue, right? You're going to select the blocks, build the queue. You're going to do the same thing with those output steps. You're selecting the destination channel, distribution location, and then we also have some additional block placement settings. You do have this option to preserve the drawing colors if you wish, so you can have them black and white or the colorized version as you harvest them into AVAIL. So depending on your preference, you do have that option. You can enable that. And then we also do these kind of automated steps, so which are normally a user by user step in Civil 3D and AutoCAD, where they have to go in and they actually have to go through the scale, rotation, and explosion steps. And this is a way that you can actually assign these things to the content itself, so that when they are being, dragged in from the add-in, it's going to automatically prompt these things if you wish. So it's a way to, again, save some steps and enable these things during the harvest process so that the individual users don't have to do this every single time on, any piece of content. So actually, let's look at some of the benefits of the harvest output, right? Take a look at some of the related content output and then also the full text search of that content. So let me drag this over. All right, so again, we'll touch on that example that I had earlier. So whenever you've harvested, oops, I meant to click on this sheet. Whenever you harvested your sheets and you've enabled that little setting during harvest, you have the option, or you'll have this new little icon, this related content icon available. And so this is where you can actually pull that open in this side panel, or you can actually open the view in its own window. And again, it's going to show you any drafting views, legends, or schedules that are on that sheet will automatically get related. And so you actually can just flip through. You can see the sheet itself, or you can flip through and see these specific drafting views. With the flip side of that, you've got your, if you look at a drafting view, I'll pull up an example here. Here we've got this related content icon that's going to pop up. It's going to be visual from this side panel. You've got some generic annotations, some system families that have been related. And then you can actually just blow this up and show off some of the detailed components as well.
Hey, Clay, you're still on the benefits of harvest page. Are you supposed to?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Share another one?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's switch between pages here. All right. Can you see the components now?
There we go.
All right, cool. And let me see here. Switch back over here. All right. So again, this is going to be the related content icon that you're going to be viewing once you've kind of done that through the harvest process. And then you've got the output for the related content. So if you're looking at pulling that open, you've got these things side by side, and you can see these additional components right next to the view. And then the other big output of Harvest, both from the Harvest for Civil 3D as well as Harvest for Revit, is the full text search capability. And so if you were to look at some of this data, let's pick a good one with a lot of text to be good. Well, this one's pretty good. All right, so if we're looking at this specific view, we got a good amount of text on there. If you're looking at the specific data, we do have a way that you can actually look at some of the, the way the content's been tagged, as well as some of the behind the scenes tagging that we're doing through the Harvest process. And so you can see here, this is any of the text that's on there. And what we've done, again, we've kind of scraped that text and we've kind of grouped it to make it searchable. So if we were looking at one of these, butyl, that's a good word. That's a good searching term. So if I was going to go back out of here, I'm going to go back to my home page and I was going to search butyl. It's going to give me all those results. As you can see, none of those drafting views were named butyl, but it's going to give me those results because it has it in the name or in the text of that view. So that's going to be, again, for both AutoCAD and Civil 3D and Harvest. That's going to be the output of the drafting views and then sheets for Revit. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let's switch back over one last time. And then we'll just kind of review those benefits again. I know we had that page open, but I kind of like to talk through it a little bit more. So again, you've got your container file for Revit. We are pro container file. You can continue to manage those things there. You can use Harvest to extract those elements, virtualize them, create the high-res previews, get the full text search capability and related content capability, and kind of eliminate the need for Revit for some of your principals and non-Revit users. And then on the AutoCAD and Civil 3D side, you're going to be virtualizing these blocks so they're easier to find. Again, with this kind of full text search capability, you're going to get the high-res previews. And then we do have an additional component around automating some of the tagging for block attributes, which is a specific component for Civil 3D and AutoCAD. All right. That kind of sums up, that was a lot to go over with AVAIL. We talked about almost every component. I'm sure there's some things that I left out, but they are things that now you can maybe explore a little bit more. So we've got YouTube pages, we've got updated content around some of the different features that were not covered during this specific session. So we invite you to explore or ask questions, reach out to ArchVision or myself, and we can always make that connection and help talk about this a little bit more. Really, it's about finding the right solution for you and your team. And we're happy to kind of present this along with ArchVision and talk about who we are. So thank you, Kelsey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Clay. And as Clay was mentioning, you can absolutely can reach out, directly to the ArchVision team. We can actually help you get set up with a license, also connect you with the AVAIL team. For those that want to explore AVAIL a little bit more, getavail.com is the place to go. So Clay, I just was kind of curious, what's the best way then that you would consider just either an individual or a business getting started with AVAIL?
Try it out, right? Get your hands on it. We have a free version that is available, and you've got, limited use to that free version, but it's going to be enough where you can kind of play around, create a couple of channels and really kind of test it out. Because you're not really gonna, I can talk about this right all day and explain all the different little features, but what you've got to understand what you want to accomplish. What's your goal for content management? What do you want to improve for your end users? And then does Avail provide that solution, right? So it's a great way. Get in there, test it out, drag some content into Avail, play around with the tagging and the searching, and kind of get a feel for it, and then ask questions.
Awesome. And, I do know that you guys have an outstanding onboarding support as well for those customers to get started. Regarding the harvest, so is there any like data limits to what you can how much file you can upload with harvest, or is there kind of an estimate on how much time it might take based on size?
It will vary on time. There's no specific data limits with Harvest, but if it's a large container file, it could take a number of hours to run and process. And something you can kind of just set, let it run, and then come back the next day and it'll be ready. But it can also take, if you've got a couple pieces of content that you're harvesting, it could take a few moments.
Okay. Okay, I think that was all my questions. I don't see any others. So again, thank you so much, Clay. I think this will just be probably part one of a more to come. So we got to start talking about phobia and RPCs with AVAIL next. So that'll be exciting. But yeah, thank you so very much for joining us. And again, we look forward to having you back.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.